Coming to you from Remax World Headquarters in Denver, Colorado. Adam Contos, CEO here with Start With The Win. And I have on the other end of the virtual monitor here, producer Mark. How you doing, buddy?
So good.
I love it. I love it. I was a little intimidated to dance today because we have our guest who happens to be, one of the champions of Dancing with the Stars. So this is going to be a fun show. Are you excited about this?
Yeah, I'm so stoked. Let's go ahead and bring them on.
All right. Well, I am honored to introduce Apolo Ohno, the retired short track speed skating competitor with an 8-time Olympic medal winning. I mean, this guy is the epitome of how do you focus? How do you create, a champion within yourself through your efforts? Apolo is the most decorated American Olympian at the Winter Olympics, inducted into the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame in 2019, best-selling author and speaker. I mean, this guy is one heck of a public speaker, and he's on a life mission to help you become your best in health, work, and life. So I'm excited to introduce Apolo. Oh, by the way, I mentioned he's also the season 4 Dancing with the Stars champion. And he's also a great philanthropist, just to name a few more accolades. So Apolo, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
Thank you. Well, I'm doing good. I'm doing really, really good this morning. It feels good, Adam. I love the dancing of the intro. I've never seen that.
Well, you participated, so thank you. Thanks for.
You got to move the body, which is good. I like that.
That's it. We start strong. We start with a smile, and I'll tell you what, it's a fun show. We're honored to have you on here because I love to really kind of reverse engineer, kind of take apart how the life of a champion, how somebody who has created massive success in different aspects of their life, how did you get there, things of that nature. So we're honored to have you. You really are a champion, a multiple champion, and have an amazing story. I've done a lot of studying on your history here, and I want to start with the early beginnings, because there's always a great way to understand somebody's success by understand how they foundationally created that. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and how, what impressions, changes, things like that, challenges you had that led to, further steps in your life?
Well, the challenge that I had as a kid were actually the fact that I would just get in my own way a lot of the time. And so my father noticed really early on, I grew up in a single parent household, and he noticed that I just had this incredible amount of energy that was, like, I would say, seemingly uncontrollable at times. And so he did what any parent would possibly think of and try to enroll me into all of these activities pre-school and then after school as he possibly could, so that I would be tired out by the time I got home. And the reality is that I wasn't. And so he saw that I had a natural propensity towards particular sports. And, swimming was one of those things. I had played all traditional American stick and ball sports. And then at the age of 12, I saw this sport of short track speed skating that caught my father's eye. We watched it during the Winter Olympics. I saw it again when I was 14. And that began this path towards just trying it for fun. And then you say the challenges when I was a kid, it was really, I think just channeling and honing in and kind of providing these guardrails for that energy and for that unique talent that I had. And then kind of, as my father would say, he was there to not hold my hand, but kind of push me in the right direction. Because, I think when you show the skill level that we had and the directional, I think just it was almost like a magnet. It wasn't clear to me at all times that this was something that I was going to do for the rest of my life. So luckily, my father was there to kind of, provide those guardrails as I was this ping pong ball, just going back and forth towards that end goal, which was eventually to make the Olympic team.
So your father, and I know you mentioned this a few times in your stories, your writings, your speeches, things like that, had this incredible discipline and work ethic. And it sounds like he was able to take that really immense strength and take your energy and combine those things together. Is that a fair statement?
I think, yeah, it definitely a fair statement. But also my father was one who, in all of the kind of raising lessons that he gave me as when I was younger, he focused a lot on, Apollo, don't forget that you have control over the effort level, over the commitment, over the dedication that you put towards something. He made it also very clear that I wasn't going to be able to win all of the races or win everything that I was doing in my life, but he was really, really, really focused on concentrating on the effort level and concentrating on the consistency of what I was putting forth. And at the time I didn't know what he was doing, but now, now we've got books like, the Growth Mindset and Carol Dweck. Like my dad was doing all of that stuff. He was never kind of, patting me on the back and saying, great job, you're so good at skating. Instead, he was saying, wow, that was fantastic. You must have worked. So tell me what was going on through your head. And this is like at the age of 12 and 13 years old. And then always kind of asking me questions, or when I would have questions asked to him, he would then pose a question back to me, which would create this introspective loop of, can I be more? Can I do better? How do I do the self-analysis? This was at a really, really young age. And so he started that seed quite early, which I think actually proved to be something that was extremely beneficial later on in my career, because that became very consistent in its habit-forming mechanism.
And so let's take this into the short track speed skating. Now, first of all, I look at like short track speed skating as like NASCAR inside. It is like super intense, person on several people type competition. This is something that you're kind of like this gladiator in the ring type situation with these folks. Can you describe what short track speed skating is to everybody so they can kind of picture that in their mind?
Short track speed skating, if you've never seen this sport, imagine an ice hockey rink, an Olympic-sized ice hockey rink, just like all NHL players play in. And we skate in the middle of that ice hockey rink on a 111-meter track with 4 to 5 to 6 other athletes on the ice at the same time. Everyone's passing each other. We're going 35 to 40 miles an hour on a piece of metal that is 1.1 millimeters thick. And we're racing. And it's not really always about who, in long track speed skating or track and field, you kind of stay in your own lane. In short track speed skating, you pass and you maneuver. There's lots of strategy. And technically, there's not supposed to be a lot of conflict between the athletes in terms of contact, but there always is, obviously, because we're racing on such short kind of millimeter-like precision. So the sport it's nuts. And your term of looking like NASCAR, that's how it's been described, as NASCAR on ice many, many times. And for anyone who's ever actually seen the sport live, it looks impossible. It actually looks fake, because these athletes are leaning over at these impossible angles on one leg, pulling like 2.5 to 2.7 G forces, which, to give you context, is like doing like a 500-pound one-legged squat repeatedly in each corner. And that's, those are called pivot. That's called doing a pivot in each corner. So the sport is fun. The sport, I tell you, has taught me so much about life, especially after I retired. And people are like, well, what do you mean? Like, like you wore like basically skin tight outfit and you raced around in circles for your whole life. Like, how does that have any correlation to business or to life now? And I'm like, oh, but en contraire, you must realize that short track speed skating is one of the most volatile sports in the world, meaning you can run the same race 4 different times and potentially get 4 different winners. And you can prepare a lifetime for that one particular moment in your life, in your career. And that race is 40 seconds long, in which 1.3 billion people are watching around the world. And now you have to be absolutely perfect. So all of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of variables of change that are outside of your control, they all seem to happen the day of that Olympic Games. And the things that you know that possibly were on the other end of the spectrum in terms of, actually happening and the chance of that happening somehow happen. The bus breaks down on the way from the Olympic Village all the way to get to the ice rink. Now you're an hour late where you're supposed to be on time for your warm-up, and you have to figure out and pivot and adapt and reinvent the way that you think about how to prepare for that day. And then you combine that with my first medal. I'm sorry if this story is a little bit long, but my first medal was actually a silver medal, and it's my favorite medal. And people would often say, well, why is that? You won gold, but why aren't those the best? And I say the reason why that silver was so important is because it was the combination of so many different events in this country's kind of timeline, but also in my life. And so I was supposed to win a race. I was like literally 10 feet away from the finish line. I was knocked down. I was in the pads, cut myself, scrambled, got myself up onto my feet, threw my skates across the finish line, and I was able to capture and win the silver medal. And most people would say, well, doesn't that feel like, the gold was taken away from you? Like, that athlete who fell into you. And I think there's one side of our psychology that says yes, but the other side is, well, there's some things I just can't control in my life, right? And just like life, just like what we've seen through COVID and all these other different types of challenges that we're all facing, those things are seemingly outside of your control. And so your ability to respond versus react in a way that maybe you are preconditioned to that won't greatly suit the outcome that you desire, your ability to respond in the way that will give you the progress that you actually seek. And while we're all seeking for perfection, because that's how many alpha like to live their life, the reality is the real value, I think, is in seeking progress over perfection. And it's that progress, as you spoke to me, kind of off mic before we started recording, about creating those micro wins on a consistent basis. And that is empowering. That is powerful. And that medal, in the silver medal in short track speed skating, to me is the metaphor for life. You can prepare your entire life for something. You feel like this was your destiny and you were meant to be. And at the snap of a finger, something happens where you don't get what you thought that you deserved, and you don't get what you thought that you wanted. And now it's up to your brain and up to you as a person to re-identify with what is important and how to carry on, how to carry forward, and how to reinvent yourself so that you can still create high performance mechanisms throughout your life. And you don't live a life filled with sorrow and doubt and regret, because that's easy. That's an emotional response that we all have as human beings. That was my first initial response to receiving the silver. I'm a diehard competitor. I'd rather chop off my own fingers than lose a race. So for me not to get something that I felt like I deserved required a reconfiguring and a rewiring of the perception of what just happened. And then that in its essence allowed me to establish a mind frame and a mindset to say, you know what, this is an incredible opportunity. This was given to me for reasons that I can't potentially explain right now. And that is powerful. That is the essence, I think, of the human experience.
I mean, amazing, truly amazing. And this is a function of you setting a direction and making these little movements every single day in your life. When did you know? I mean, you talked about your father and you watching this short track speed skating, going, this is really a cool sport. When did you think, I want to be the best in the world at this? And when did you set the Olympics as your goal? I mean, how did that process go?
Well, the Olympics as my goal began quite early, probably when I was about 14, 15 years old. I didn't understand what it was going to require of me physically and mentally in order to achieve that goal. But my father, always told me that he saw talent and he saw in me very early, even before I started skating. He thought that I was going to do something spectacular, and I think many parents believe that of their child. My dad was very adamant and really tried to kind of set the stage, so to speak, to prepare me. So the Olympic path is one that, until you go through it and you live it, there's many different types of living and experiencing the Olympic journey. And not all of them are the same. They're all unique. Some athletes are completely acceptant of the fact that say, I'm okay just making the Olympic team. I'm not trying to win Olympic medals. I just want to make the team. Some athletes just say, like, I just want to make the team, but I'm okay being a part of the national team. Someone asked me when I was 17 years old, what do you want people to say when you leave the sport? And I wrote this down, and it's actually at the ice rink near the University of Utah. I wrote this down during one of our we would get together as a team and we would kind of write out these goals. And I wrote down, I want to be remembered as the greatest athlete to have ever skated on this ice. I didn't know what I was saying, but I think subconsciously there was something there that was hungry to do something extraordinary. Now, extraordinary meaning nothing that I had seen done by my peers at the time. It wasn't that extraordinary. I just wanted to push the envelope, and I wanted to see what the potential was. And the more that I read and the more people that I talked to, the environment that I was around, whether it was the wrestlers or the other athletes in the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, I was able to just suck up some of that incredible inspiration and motivation from them, to hear from them about how they've dedicated their life, how they didn't make 2 Olympic teams back to back. So 8 years of training, they still didn't accomplish their goal, but they were still there grinding and pursuing and pushing and trying to figure out ways in which to accomplish that. And I thought that was really powerful. So, the path of the Olympic realm is really, it's beautiful and it's really hard. And it's not until you peel back that curtain, as we see in all industries, right? We always look to that person, whether it's in real estate, whether it's in construction, development, residential, commercial, whatever that is, we always look at that person and say, man, that guy or that woman is just, they're crushing it. I want what they have. And whenever you see them, maybe they've got this beautiful smile and energy that is infectious about them. But what you don't know is the pain that was required as the entrance fee to get to that point. It's not always easy, and it takes time. And the Olympic path is no different. And there's a price to pay. And every human being has the ability to switch that high performance mechanism inside their head. I didn't know. It took me many failures, Adam, many failures to recognize the talent that I had and to stop self-sabotaging and to actually allow and surrender myself to the work and the stoicism, ethical beliefs that I believed in, both in the sport and outside, to be able to pursue something 100% wholeheartedly.
It sounds like a little bit like a project called the Hard Pivot, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, this is an open letter that you're working on, or that you are pursuing to help people. So I mean, this is some amazing insight from somebody who set a goal and then put these daily activities into place. And frankly, a lot of people don't have the ability to recognize that fact, and you recognized it, whether or not you knew it as a young man, and started putting those things into place. So how did you know what you needed to do on a daily basis in order to go achieve greatness?
So, I think when you're in the fight, that's what I like to call it. When you're in the fight and you set these goals seem audacious. They seem big. They seem somewhat impossible. And as an Olympic athlete, we set our goals 4 years in advance. So, instead of looking at, and we look at it every quarter, every competition, every month, every week, every day, every training session, every hour, we look at those things and we deconstruct them and we reverse engineer. So if I know that today is, let's just call it 2006, and I just finished an Olympic Games, the goal setting process begins after I have already committed to the next Olympic competition, which would be in 4 years. And then we would reverse engineer. Well, what is my goal? My goal is to X, Y, and Z. Well, what is it going to take? At what body weight? At what training environment? At what altitude? At what levels of performance are going to be required? And if this is where I'm skating today, how do I be here? Because the sport will evolve and it will revolutionize using technology, new athletes, etc. And along that path and journey, when you set forth those goals, how do you know those goals are too crazy and maybe not crazy enough? There's a fine line. And so something that I read very early on was reach for what is unreachable. So as we set goals for ourselves, it's great. We thrive on the micro wins. We need them. We have to taste them. That's why this whole thing around this pandemic has been so challenging, because we don't get that interaction with human beings on a day-to-day basis as much as we used to. We're socially designed that way. And now we're doing everything digitally, which is also okay, but getting the nod, getting the smile, getting the disagreement, getting all those things, we don't have them. Same thing with my coaches. And when we were competing, I needed to set something for my 4-year goal that seemed impossible at the time, right? It seemed a little bit too much out of reach. And it forced me to hold up what I call the radically transparent mirror. And it's not until you're willing to do that, to look at yourself, to accept yourself, right? Because that's the first form of, I think, self-love, and understanding that, you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But you don't have to stay stagnant in your preconditioned belief or system or the way that you've lived your life. You are an ever-growing, powerful person with the right type of commitment and light switch to go on to say, you know what, enough of saying I'm going to do this in January, and then January 18th comes, and then that New Year's resolution has just faded. Now that's a form of consistency. So your original question, which was around the goal setting process and how do I want to be great, it started with getting my first micro wins and understanding that I actually could win races. I could have success. Without that, it doesn't exist, right? If you've been trying something over and over and over again and you've had no wins, then maybe you need to scale that thing back and start to look at the small micro wins as your big wins on a day-to-day basis. Gain the momentum, get that, snowball effect to start rolling again. And then, as you know, momentum is powerful. And when you feel good, ride it, use it. It's like the downhill on a bike. Build that speed as fast as you can, because you never know when the environment changes and now you have to go back uphill, and it's very hard and the slog is slow and everything feels like a struggle. So you have to, life is like that, right? It's like these cycles. Speed skating and the Olympics is like that. And knowing that it doesn't matter. Every day is not going to be this easy coasting feeling. But for me to embrace when it is the hottest, when the flame is the closest, when it is the most uncertain and the most challenging, that's when you build the type of character traits that are required over time to handle any type of situation and uncertainty. And, Hard Pivot, which is the book that I've been writing for actually 4 years now, is an open letter to a younger Apollo. It's an open letter to someone who is struggling or has been forced to go into reinvention and to hard pivot. When we go into a corner, Adam, we go straight like this, right? We're going 35 miles an hour, and then we have to do a hard U-turn on one leg. And if you don't succeed in that corner, you fall, you hit the pads, and it's devastation. You don't have to stay down. You have to get back up, right? And scramble to your feet and continue and try to finish the race. But that hard pivot, I'm a firm believer, is not only going to happen to each one of us, it's absolutely critical for each one of us to have and experience transformation and growth and all of those things that we know about, right? The personal development, the psychological aspects of business and personal life, they are so intertwined now. And as we as human beings start to recognize that stress and pressure can be incredible traits for beautiful substances, right? And that means we create diamonds, we create boiling water, pressure and heat, and all these things, we thrive in them. So don't sway away from them. There's definitely a difference between getting in the red zone, which is too much, it's just too hot, you can't handle it, and the green zone, which is coasting. You want to be in that yellow zone, which I talk about as that sweet spot. And that sweet spot is where it forces you to grow. You're going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy, but that's what's required of you. And that's how you become the best version of yourself. So the more and the faster that we can recognize that, the easier it is. And that's what my life passion today is, to help people unlock that within themselves, right? Is to say, look, enough is enough. I'm so sick and tired of getting in my own way. I'm so sick and tired of self-sabotaging, maybe because subconsciously I don't really believe that I deserve to win. Maybe I don't believe that I'm good enough. Enough of that. It's all the BS that's happening between your two ears. You can change the paradigm shift. And it's not until you are willing to do it that anything that I write in this book is going to be useful. So it starts from within first, right? I'm not some guru who's giving you some like recipe for success. I'm saying I too have felt pain. I too have made mistakes. I too have gone down the wrong path. I too have self-sabotaged. And you know what? I too have been able to turn that around to my advantage, to be able to enrich the life that we all deserve to live. And so that's what the message really is it's a message of loss of identity, of reinvention, of adaptation, and figuring out how to thrive instead of just survive when it's time to do the hard pivot.
Super inspired right now sitting here. And I 100% agree with everything you're saying. And as you're talking, you kind of reflect on these moments in life, each of us personally, that we've had to make a hard pivot or that we have slipped and hit the wall. And then you start getting into this self-doubt. And I think a lot of self-doubt has crept forth more during COVID and people being, in lockdown, things like that. And then we start, we get to the point where we start labeling it as mental health issues. So you actually have to talk people into more of a hard pivot now than call it a year or 2 years ago when people are, they're going through society. They're like, yeah, all right, the economy's good, whatever, we're doing these great things. And then everybody, boom, it comes to a screeching halt and we're all in a major challenge. What do you have any advice for people to, and you talked about holding up the mirror, which is, I use that phrase a lot because I think that's incredibly powerful when it comes to, shaking it off and looking at yourself and going, I'm still here. So what advice do you have, or what statements can you give to people who need to make the hard pivot, who are going through the struggle with reinvention, loss of identity, uncertainty, things like that? And how can they make themselves pivot in order to adapt to new opportunity?
Well, I think first and foremost, the mirror is your greatest asset in times like this. The human condition and the human experience has proven over millions of years of just how adaptable that we are, right? The way that the human body responds and reacts to training, to trauma, and how it somehow autonomously reconfigures itself in a way that allows us to continue living in these environments is astonishing. Now, that can be accelerated once you begin to believe that it can be accelerated. So by holding up the mirror, it forces you to have the vulnerability and come to terms with, hey, like I said before, you're not perfect. You've made mistakes. You have been complicit in the actions that have led you to not getting what you believe works. Or maybe you feel like you have exhausted everything and nothing seems to sway your way. Maybe the deck of cards feels like it's just missing cards right now and you're being dealt a hand that is just garbage. That's life. And it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be always just peaches and cream, as they always say. There will be times, absolutely, when you will smile back on this moment and almost chuckle and laugh at yourself for acting and reacting and responding in certain ways. The happiest people in the world that we've been able to kind of interview and talk to seem to always have the same thing. They're very present. They're grateful, right? The simplicity of things that I call, the 5 golden principles, they seem to resonate, even though I didn't tell them anything about that. These are natural things that they have, right? They've got gratitude. They're willing to give to others and to themselves a chance to have success. They've got the grit during times when they know it's going to be challenging. They were willing to gear up their personal expectations. And they were also willing to get into action, even when they didn't have all of the answers. They were willing to go out there and go against the grain and try to do something that's risky. So the message really, Adam, for people who are struggling with reinvention, who have a really difficult time with the loss of identity, is the following. Number one, you're not alone. You don't have to go through it alone either. This doesn't have to be an individual sport. And even though short track speed skating for me was an individual sport, and when I was receiving the medal, optically, it looked like I was the one who was only on the podium. The reality is there's an army of people behind me, and they are the ones who all have a piece of that medal. Just like anyone who's had success in business in their life, there's always been little droplets, sometimes bigger, of people and information and mentors and guidance and inspiration from many, many people. And so when you're going through this loss of identity, when you're going through reinvention and a hard pivot, it's time to start using that vulnerability and wearing it on your sleeve, owning it, knowing that there is millions of people out there who are also in the same realm as you, but not only wearing the vulnerability on this side, but on this side, wearing the strength, the empathy, the gratitude, the grit, and knowing that these are the traits that make up the human experience. So while you're not perfect, and while this is painful and hard, it is temporary, right? We had to train 4 years of our life for a moment that lasted 40 seconds long. There was many times where I was considering and thought, is this the right path? Is this what I'm good at? Am I good enough? Maybe I'm getting too old. Maybe the other team on the other side of the world is just genetically designed better for this sport. Maybe there's nothing that I can do that can be the best version of myself. And then you have to have the other conversation with the other voice and say, you know what? That voice is right. There's a lot of what ifs, but I don't have to live my life in that way. So as you go through the reinvention process, identifying your natural strengths, what do you love to do? Obviously, I'm a big reader. So Viktor Frankl is a huge proponent of finding purpose, right? So once you find your purpose, whatever that is, whether it's your family, whether it's to make more money, whether it's to get a promotion, it doesn't really matter. Finding it, identifying it, using it, honing in on it, targeting it. And then two things. I'm going to use these sticky Post-it notes because I use them all the time, and I hold them up because they're on my desk to remind me, Adam, of the importances. This is my ownership, right? Is look, and for those who are not, if there's no video here, so you can't see it, this says, don't think you are, know you are. Know it, feel it, emotionally become immersed in what that is. Know that you are good enough. Know that you have the chance to win. You may not get the win. You may not get the metric you desire, but you have a chance. And that chance, that flicker of light is what you really require. And then after you go through this process and this kind of self-analysis, the second step is to say, okay, let's wipe away all the personal development. Let's wipe away all of the kind of guru talk around, law of attraction. All that stuff is great, fine and dandy. Now you got to start focusing on this. Right? Now you start focusing on process over the prize. The prize is the target, right? Just like if you're a sniper and you're looking at a target, right, on a bullseye, that's the goal, is to hit that. But there's a whole series of processes that you should be concentrating on versus saying, I got to hit the target, I got to hit the target, I got to hit the target. That's irrelevant. We know, we've already established that. That's your goal. Your next method of action is to reverse engineer the steps. And by steps, we mean this can get down to the micro routine level. I know that you're a huge proponent of structure and routine to create the micro wins on a day-to-day basis. And until you change your mindset and shift into overdrive or shift into the high performance mechanism area that everyone has, you won't be able to tap into that. So reverse engineering that goal and that metric and saying, what are the steps that I need to do today, right now, before lunch, before noon, that I know will set me up to have a successful day? That's how it begins. It starts on the small stuff. You get the momentum, you get the wins, you start checking off things on your list of things that you have to do. Doesn't mean if you like them or not. And that's how you create the consistency and the reconditioning of what you once thought was normal into the new paradigm of your version 2.0. And that's literally the recipe. I didn't make it up. That's the recipe. That's the science.
I can't say anything more than amen, brother. I mean, this is when you look at deconstructing success, I think you hit the nail on the head here many times. I mean, you drove it into the board, hitting the nail on the head so many times with deconstructing success. The two quotes, don't think you are, know you are, and process over prize. People, if they can look at those on a regular basis, and I encourage all of our listeners to do what Apollo has done, put them on sticky notes and stick them on your desk in front of you. That's first thing I'm going to be doing as soon as we get off of this recording. But Apollo, I want to throw one more curveball at you that you've very subversively addressed. And I know you know the answer to this because you've overcome this. But I mean, the reality is so many people in this day and age stop because they're afraid of other people's judgment on them, other people's opinions.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how give us a quick piece of advice for our listeners when you're sitting there going, yeah, this guy's firing me up. And then they walk out the door and they're like, somebody's going to push back because they're going to call me out for, you're not an expert. You're not an Olympic athlete, whatever it is. And they get pushed against and they immediately fold because of somebody else's opinion. How do you deal with that and overcome it and just put it in the rearview mirror and not have to deal with it again?
Well, I'm really happy that you actually brought that up, because those thoughts and those feelings about what may happen will probably happen. Someone will tell you that you are not good enough. And that person may be a family member. That person may be close to you. And that's even more hurtful when you hear those things. You have to find an environment that you can create that lifts you in a way that you didn't lift you before. And for those who feel like, society gives them external signals of things that don't allow them to be the full version of themselves, I believe that our society is actually gravitating towards what I call this true radical authenticity. And we all know someone in our life, whether it's like, the wild uncle who just can't stop just being himself. Like, he's just so naturally himself and we love him for that. And he just chuckles at himself because he's so authentic. He can't just help but to be just so outspoken. He'll tell you like it is. And the reason why we love and gravitate towards those people is because we see truth in that. There's a lot of truth in someone who can't help it, but just being themselves. Even if it's not even a good person, we somehow just say, you know what? It's somewhat endearing associated. You can be the version of yourself. And so a lot of those conversations are happening between your own head. And that, what if I don't want to offend this person? Like, I get it. Workplaces can be sensitive environments, and you have to have the emotional navigation system to be able to maneuver through that system. But at the end of the day, your life is a gift. Okay? I'll say it again. Your life is a gift. And every day that you spend living it for someone else who doesn't matter in your life, you are wasting that day. If I had listened to every single person, Adam, who had told me that it was impossible to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish during the Olympic year, I would have never made the podium. I said, I want to be the lightest I'd ever been. I want to be 142, which is my body weight. I want to leg press 2,000 pounds. And I had strength and conditioning coaches tell me that's not feasible. It's, it's too light. You're going to lose too much power. If I had listened to those people and gone back and allowed that analysis to paralyze me, then I would have crushed my dreams. So your dreams are exactly what they are. And you may not get them in its entirety. That's not what this game is about, playing it, how you play it on a day-to-day basis. And don't forget that your life is a gift. And the time that you spend with yourself, with your friends, with your loved ones, your purpose for providing, whether it's to your community, whether it's to your family, whether it's for yourself, your personal drive, whether it's for your organization, your team, these things should be concentrating on. Don't be afraid to fall on your face. That is the least of your worries. Your only true judgment should be what happens when you don't hit the metric. What happens when you do fall on your face? Then everyone is watching. And as soon as you rise to your feet and you shake it off and you recalibrate and then you re-engage, that's when people get the spark in their eye, even when they were critical before, and say, wow, I want what that woman is doing. That is pretty kick-ass. Like, I want that. I want some of that in my life. To me, that's the American dream, right? That is being American. Is like, we'll find a way. We'll figure it out. Like, we will find a solution in some capacity. It may not be the best solution, but we will find some sort of a solution. And then again, I know I keep harping on this, Adam, but man, life is so short. And with all of the elements around us that are constantly vying to steal our attention for micro minutes of the day, don't lose it. Don't lose sight of your purpose. Don't lose sight of why you're here. I fail frequently. I get distracted very easily because of all these powerful opportunities that come into my life, interesting people and things. And so I've had to become very good at saying no. No, the main thing is the main thing. That's what I'm doing. That's what matters. The long game is important. It feels like everyone in the world is doing a hard pivot. Everyone in the world is doing X, Y, and Z. But you know what? The last mile is the least crowded. So while everyone is jumping into something today, the last mile, the last bit of performance and grit and time is where you separate yourself from everyone else. And it's not until you get to the last mile. Most people give up in the halfway mark. Most people give up before the halfway mark. Most people give up and they hadn't even started the race. They haven't even taken the first step. Okay. So the fact that you can inch your way, keep going. It's not a sprint, man. This thing happens over time. Transformation is not easy. Change is hard for all of us. But it's proven we can. And we will. So that's my message to those who are kind of, thinking about those things. And I hope it resonates.
Wow. It certainly does. I mean, some incredible champion insight from you, Apolo. Hey, where can our listeners find you on online, on social media, things like that, to follow your journey and your message?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Apolo Ohno, at Apolo Ohno on Instagram. I've got my Facebook page up, and then we have our website, apoloohno.com.
All right. And that's APOLOOHNO. All right. Apolo, I have a question. I mean, this has been just very fulfilling listening to the habits of a champion, the things that go through your mind, and how you created the successes and the failures that you created in order to achieve the successes. So inspirational. Thank you. But our listeners have a question for you. And that's something that I ask everybody on the show. And that is, how do you, champion, start your day with a win?
My days are structured, and I do essentially the same thing every single morning. I rise and I grab my phone. I don't turn it off of. I don't turn it back on. It's always an airplane mode. Airplane mode overnight. I begin my process by just simple breathing, kind of resetting, realigning with my body and my mind. And then I begin to start my day I've got a routine of whether I make a hot beverage or a coffee or a tea, whatever it is. And I start the process of kind of assimilating these ideas around the goals that I set yesterday that I want to accomplish this morning. And it can be the micro wins of, maybe it's making the bed, maybe it's enjoying this, this hot beverage, maybe it's reviewing the goal sheet that I have and the task list that I've got in front of me today. And then also being intentional about how I would like the day to go. That happens to be really important. So, for example, this morning, I knew that we were going to spend time together. So again, my intention this morning was, well, how do I prepare my mind and this discussion with some potential ideas, thoughts, and also stories that will resonate with your audience? And how do I do so that they feel like this was time that was well spent? Because time is so finite. That's really important to me. So that intentionality begins at the start of my day. That began back when I was training many, many, many years ago, where every workout mattered. Every training session mattered. And so the intention going into each workout was really important to focus and sharpen and identify. And just like now, COVID's been so challenging for many of us. I'm talking to you from Los Angeles, California today. Businesses are still not open out here. Like, they are still shut down. And so we are not having kind of in-person formal discussions on a day-to-day basis. And every Tuesday turns into a Saturday. Every Saturday feels like a Wednesday. Like, there's a blurred lines everywhere. And so it's really important for me to delineate each day and section them off into these small micro wins. And my morning begins like that every single morning. And I'm pretty sacred about kind of protecting that. Like, it seems to be really, really important to me. And there's days where I don't get to do some of those things, and whether that's sitting and breathing and meditating, or just calming my mind, to be completely frank and honest, to prepare for potential chaos, to ensue throughout the rest of the day. And I know that when I took those wins in the morning, I'm prepping my mind. I'm priming my mind. I'm priming my body for what is to come, just like you before a race. If you look at what athletes do 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes before they go to the start line, those are really important minutes right before. And if athletes are doing this, if servicemen and servicemen are preparing psychologically their mind before they go into battle, why should we be doing anything different? Our battlefield may look different on the outside, but the battlefield's between our 2 ears. It's the same place. So that's up to you. That's up to the listener. That's up to every single person who's hearing this message, is like, switch from the passenger seat, get your butt over into the driver's seat, grab a hold of that steering wheel and start to take some control. Because once you do, it's confidence building. I mean, I would agree, right? Like when you win those things, this is something that makes me feel good, and this makes me feel good, which makes me perform my best. And so that's what I need to do to perform my best.
Unbelievable. I mean, great message. I believe in so much of what you do that I do so much of it myself. So thank you for reiterating those points and really that structure and that process. I mean, you hit on a process, it creates habits, the habits of champions, things like that. And we know it works. We know it works. It's just, will we do it in order to, make those micro commitments to do the next one and the next one and the next day and the next week. So such an amazing time spent with you today, my friend. I mean, you've been a great friend of Remax. We're happy to deliver your message and really look forward to hard pivot and really diving deep into that as well. So again, thanks for all you do. You're an amazing American, an amazing leader, an amazing champion. And thanks for starting with a win.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening to Start With a Win. If you'd like to ask Adam a question or tell us your Start With a Win story, give us a call and leave us a message at 888-581-4430. Don't forget to go on to iTunes and subscribe, write a review, and rate the show. And for more great content, head over to startwithawin.com. Follow Adam on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And remember, start with a win.
Right.
Boom.
Well, hello, YouTube audience. And Apollo, thanks so much for being here, my friend. That was incredible.
So good.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. That was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do it again soon, and hopefully next time we can do it in person. So
yes,
thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, definitely. You got to come back out here to Colorado. It's gorgeous. We're expecting our first real hard freeze this weekend. So
my favorite time of the year.
That's right.
Awesome.
Okay, guys, enjoy. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.
See ya. Oh man, that was good.
that was so good. I mean, that guy's incredible. And I remember, I'll tell you, I watched all of his, his skating and followed him during the Olympics and things like that. And I remember that silver that he won because they fell and got back up and things like that. I remember that. And he had like this big gash in his leg and stuff like that. I mean, those guys are skating around with like samurai swords on their feet.
I know.
That is not the safest thing to do, but they are so focused in what they do that, and they make it look effortless, but you can also tell that they are just powerhouses powering through those, every time they move their legs again and again and again, and they're weaving their way in and out of the pack. And I mean, that's a pretty intense sport. I don't think, it gets the credit for that person on person competition that it really creates. So pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so cool. I'm glad we got to bring him on the show and talk to him. He had some awesome quotes. I know you mentioned him back in the show that, don't think you are, know you are. That is a great reminder. And then the process over prize, that really got me. I was like, that is something that we need to be reminded of constantly, right? Because we're always so focused on the prize and not the process, and everybody hates the process. I know you talk about this, right? It's all about the process. So
it's about the process. Everybody's like, here's my goal. Well, your goal doesn't matter if you don't know how you're going to get there. And how you get there is those little things you do every day in order to build up that account of compounded interest of those little bitty efforts that create the result. So, they always talk about the people who look at performance philosophy always talk about the 10,000 hours that you don't see of the hard work in order to just see like what Apollo was talking about, that 40 seconds on the track. Mm-hmm. I mean, he didn't go, hey, I think I'll go strap on some skates and go run around the circle here a few times and win some Olympic medals. I mean, that took him years of daily hard work and effort and training and eating right and mindset and conditioning and all of these other things. And, that's the result we see now. And that's the result he can talk about. But I love the fact he also talks about the vulnerability in that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 2 other takeaways I loved was the recalibrate and re-engage. I think we always need to be reminded of that. Like when you fall down, you recalibrate and then you re-engage with what you're doing. You don't just give up. And then I love that line he said, the last mile is the least crowded. It's like most people don't make it. So keep pushing, and it's just like solid, super solid.
It's some gold in these episodes. I know there's going to be 2 of them. So everybody, if you just watch the second one, go back and watch the first one and or listen to it and take notes, because this guy drops a ton of value on us. And, you could literally, he's doing it. You could literally write a book on what we just recorded with Apolo Ohno. So
thanks guys for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, and also that bell icon so you get reminded every time a new episode drops. Again, thank you so much. If you have any comments, leave those below. And you might want us to talk about a certain topic, or you might have just an interesting question you want to ask to Adam. Just go ahead and leave that in the comment box below. But until next time, we'll see you when we see you.